Thanksgiving dinner. Aunt asked what I do for a living. Mom cut in. She's just bouncing between jobs. Nothing serious. Everyone laughed. I excused myself. 5 minutes later, Mom's phone started ringing. The cranberry sauce was homemade this year. Mom had spent 3 hours on it, making sure everything was perfect for our family Thanksgiving at Aunt Patricia's house. The dining room smelled like rosemary and butter, and 24 people crowded around tables that had been pushed together to accommodate everyone. I sat between my cousin Derek and my younger brother Nathan, picking at my sweet potatoes while the adults dominated the conversation. I'm Rosita, 32 years old, and I've spent the last 4 years building something my mother refuses to acknowledge as real work. But we'll get to that. So, Rosita, Aunt Patricia said, her wine glass suspended midair as she turned her attention toward me. What are you doing these days? Last I heard, you were working at that tech startup. The table quieted. Multiple pairs of eyes shifted in my direction. I opened my mouth to respond, but Mom beat me to it. Oh, she's just bouncing between jobs. Nothing serious? Mom waved her hand dismissively, then took a bite of turkey. You know how millennials are. Can't seem to settle on anything. The laughter started with Uncle Tom, then spread like wildfire around the table. Aunt Patricia tried to hide her smile behind her napkin. My cousin Jessica snorted into her water glass. Even Grandma Helen was chuckling, shaking her head like I was some kind of confused child who couldn't figure out how to be a proper adult. My face burned. Nathan glanced at me with sympathy, but he was only 19 and still dependent on our parents for college tuition. He couldn't exactly defend me without consequences. Excuse me, I said quietly, standing up. I need to use the restroom. Nobody really noticed me leave. They'd already moved on to discussing Derek's promotion at his accounting firm, praising him for his stability and excellent life choices. I walked down the hallway, past the family photos that lined on Patricia's walls, and locked myself in the bathroom. My phone was already in my hand. I pulled up my email and started typing. See, here's what Mom didn't bother to mention to anyone. I'm not bouncing between jobs. I'm the founder and CEO of a software consulting company called Meridian Solutions. We specialize in custom database management systems for mid-size healthcare companies. I started it 4 years ago with $12,000 I'd saved from my previous job as a senior developer at a firm in Boston. The first year was brutal. I worked 16-hour days, slept on my friend Amanda's couch for 8 months, and survived on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. But I believed in what I was building. I hired my first employee in month 7, a brilliant programmer named Marcus who took a chance on my unknown company. By year 2, we had 4 employees and had landed our first major contract with a hospital network in Connecticut. Year 3 brought us to 12 employees and consistent 6-figure revenues. This year, year 4, we crossed into 7-figure territory. We now have 23 employees, an office in downtown Boston, and clients in 6 states. But Mom, she tells people I'm bouncing between jobs. She's never asked about my work, never toured my office, never met my employees. When I tried to explain what I do at last year's Christmas dinner, she changed the subject to my cousin Brandon's new car. When I invited her to our company's 3rd anniversary celebration, she said she was too busy organizing her book club. The truth is, Mom has a very specific idea of what success looks like, and it involves working for someone else, getting a steady paycheck, and having a title she can brag about to her friends. Entrepreneur sounds too risky, too unstable, too much like failure waiting to happen. She wants me to be a doctor, like my brother plans to be, or a lawyer like her best friend's daughter, or literally anything that comes with business cards from an established institution. I finished typing the email on my phone. My hands were shaking, but not from nervousness, from rage that had been building for 4 years. The email was addressed to Jennifer Kim, the CEO of one of the largest hospital networks in Massachusetts. We'd been in preliminary discussions for 3 months about a massive contract that would essentially double my company's revenue. The system they needed was complex, involving patient data migration from 3 different legacy systems, HIPAA compliance consulting, and ongoing maintenance. The contract was worth $2. $3 million over 2 years. Before I hit send, I let myself remember everything that had led to this moment. Every dismissive comment, every time Mom changed the subject when I tried to share good news, every family gathering where my career was treated like an embarrassing phase I'd eventually grow out of. There was the time I'd landed my first major contract with a clinic in Vermont, a $180,000 deal that had nearly made me cry with relief because it meant I could finally afford to move out of Amanda's apartment and pay myself a real salary. I called Mom that evening, breathless with excitement, and she'd said, "That's nice, honey, but have you thought about applying to grad school? Your father and I would help with tuition." There was the family barbecue 2 summers ago where I mentioned we were hiring our 8th employee, and Uncle Tom had patted my shoulder condescendingly and said, "Well, it's good you're keeping busy with your little project." My little project. Like I was selling friendship bracelets on Etsy instead of managing a $250,000 payroll. There was the Christmas when I tried to explain our HIPAA compliance framework to Dad, thinking maybe he'd understand the technical challenges we'd overcome, and he'd interrupted me mid-sentence to ask Nathan about his biology grades. There was the Christmas when I tried to explain our HIPAA compliance framework to Dad, thinking maybe he'd understand the technical challenges we'd overcome, and he'd interrupted me mid-sentence to ask Nathan about his biology grades. Just cut me off completely, as if I hadn't been speaking at all. But the worst was probably my birthday dinner 2 years ago. We'd gone to that Italian restaurant Mom loves, and she'd invited her friend Karen, whose daughter Emily works as a marketing director at a pharmaceutical company. Karen spent 45 minutes talking about Emily's salary, Emily's benefits package, Emily's corner office, Emily's company car, and Mom had nodded along enthusiastically, occasionally glancing at me with this look that clearly said, "See, this is what success looks like." When Karen finally asked what I did, Mom jumped in before I could answer. "Oh, Rosita does computer work. Freelance stuff, you know how it is." She'd wave her hand like she was swatting away a fly. "We keep hoping she'll find something more permanent." I'd sat there with a forkful of pasta halfway to my mouth, too stunned to correct her. At that point, Meridian Solutions had 11 employees, an annual revenue of $980,000. We weren't some fly-by-night operation. We had an office lease, business insurance, a corporate bank account, and a 5-year strategic plan. But to Mom, I was just doing computer work. The bathroom tiles were cold under my feet, pulling me back to the present. I could hear muffled laughter from the dining room, probably someone telling another story about their wonderful conventional career. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror above the sink, and I barely recognized the woman I saw there. When had I become so small in my own family? When had I started accepting their narrative about my life instead of insisting on the truth? The answer came to me with uncomfortable clarity. I'd been accepting it because part of me had been afraid they were right. Part of me had wondered if I was delusional, if building my own company was just an elaborate way of avoiding real work. Every time a client payment came in late, every time we lost a bid to a larger firm, every time I had to front money from my personal savings to make payroll, that small voice in my head whispered that maybe Mom was right. Maybe I was just bouncing around pretending to be a CEO when I was really just a developer who'd gotten too big for her britches. But then I'd look at Marcus, who'd left a comfortable position at IBM to join my scrappy startup because he believed in a vision. I'd look at Amanda, who'd taken a pay cut to become our director of operations because she wanted to build something meaningful. I'd look at the rest of my team, brilliant people who showed up every day and poured their talent into the company we were creating together. They believed in Meridian Solutions. They believed in me. Why couldn't my own mother do the same? I pulled up my contacts and scrolled to Jennifer Kim's number. We'd exchanged personal cell numbers after our second meeting when she texted me an article about women in tech leadership. Jennifer was in her 50s, had 2 adult children, and understood family dynamics in a way that made her easy to talk to. During our last meeting, over coffee at a cafe near her hospital, she'd asked about my support system. I'd been honest with her in a way I rarely was with clients. I told her about my family's skepticism, about feeling invisible at family gatherings, about Mom's constant suggestions that I get a real job. Jennifer had listened with her hands wrapped around her coffee mug, and when I finished, she'd said something I'd never forget. My parents didn't come to my MBA graduation. They thought I was wasting my nursing career, that I was getting above myself. It wasn't until I became a hospital administrator years later that they finally admitted they'd been wrong. But you know what? By then, their approval didn't matter as much anymore. I'd already proved it to myself. Then she'd offered to call my mother if we signed the Henderson contract. Sometimes parents need to hear it from someone else, she'd said. Someone with authority they respect. It shouldn't be necessary, but that's the world we live in. I declined at the time, saying it wasn't needed. But sitting in that bathroom, humiliation still burning in my chest, I realized Jennifer had been right. Mom wasn't going to believe me. She needed external validation. I sent Jennifer a text. Remember your offer to call my mom? I'm ready to take you up on it if it's still available. 3 dots appeared immediately. Absolutely. Give me her number. I'll call in about 5 minutes as soon as I finish reviewing these charts. I sent Mom's contact information, then added, Thank you, Jennifer. This means more than you know. We women have to look out for each other, especially when our families don't understand what we're building. I pocketed my phone and splashed cold water on my face. My makeup was still intact, which felt like a small victory. I looked put together, even if I felt like I'd been emotionally shredded. There was a knock on the bathroom door. Rosita, you okay in there? It was Nathan. I opened the door. My brother stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, looking concerned. I heard what Mom said, he told me quietly. That was messed up. Yeah, I didn't trust myself to say more. For what it's worth, I think what you've built is incredible. I told my roommate about your company last week, about how you started from nothing and now you've got this whole team. He was really impressed. Something in my chest loosened slightly. Thanks, Nathan. That actually helps. Mom doesn't mean to be hurtful, you know. She just has this narrow definition of success, and she can't see outside of it. I know, but intention doesn't erase impact. He nodded, looking older than his 19 years. You going back in there? In a minute. I need to compose myself first. Take your time. I'll save you some pie. He squeezed my shoulder and headed back to the dining room. I stood in the hallway for another moment, practicing the calm, professional demeanor I wore to client meetings. Rosita Mitchell, CEO of Meridian Solutions, a woman who negotiated 6-figure contracts and managed a team of talented professionals. That was who I was, regardless of whether my family recognized it. The woman who'd left the table 10 minutes ago had been humiliated and small. The woman walking back in would be different. She'd be someone who just set events in motion that would change everything. Jennifer and I had built genuine rapport during our meetings. She was a self-made woman herself, having worked her way up from a nursing position to eventually getting her MBA and climbing the administrative ladder. She respected what I'd built and had told me multiple times that she was impressed by my technical knowledge and leadership. In my email, I confirmed our Friday meeting to finalize the contract terms and sign the initial paperwork. I kept it professional, confirmed the time and location, and thanked her for her continued confidence in Meridian Solutions. Then I hit send. I waited approximately 90 seconds before texting Marcus, my CTO and first hire. Just confirm the Henderson contract signing for Friday. Can you make sure the proposal documents are printed and bound by Thursday afternoon? His response came immediately. Already done. Congratulations, boss. This is huge. Then I texted Amanda, my director of operations. Henderson deal is happening. Start the hiring process for the 3 new positions we discussed. We'll need them onboarded by January. Her reply, I'm on it. You deserve this, Rosita. You've worked your ass off. I looked at myself in Aunt Patricia's bathroom mirror. My reflection showed a woman in a navy dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. I looked calm, professional, nothing like the humiliated girl who had left the dinner table 5 minutes ago. Then I did something I'd been planning for weeks but hadn't pulled the trigger on. I called my publicist. Yes, I have a publicist. Her name is Rebecca Torres, and I hired her 2 months ago when Boston Business Journal reached out about featuring Meridian Solutions in their 30 Under 30 Tech Leaders issue. Rebecca had been helping me navigate the increased media attention my company was getting. Rebecca, it's Rosita. Remember that profile piece we've been working on? I'm ready to move forward with everything. The photo shoot, the interviews, all of it. Wonderful. Rebecca's enthusiasm crackled through the phone. The journalist wants to focus on your journey from developer to CEO. They're particularly interested in the fact that you're a woman in tech leadership and that you bootstrapped everything without venture capital. It's a compelling story. Perfect.
Schedule whatever you need to schedule. The issue publishes on January 12th. It'll be on newsstands and heavily promoted on their social media. This is going to be fantastic exposure for Meridian Solutions.
We wrapped up the call, and I stood there for another moment, letting the adrenaline settle. Then I washed my hands, checked my makeup, and walked back to the dinner table. Mom was in the middle of a story about her garden when I sat down. Nobody acknowledged my return. I picked up my fork, continued eating my now cold sweet potatoes. That's when Mom's phone started ringing. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and ignored it. The ringing stopped, then immediately started again. "Someone really wants to reach you," Aunt Patricia observed. Mom picked up the phone this time. "Hello." "Oh, Jennifer. Hi, how are you?" I kept my eyes on my plate, cutting my turkey into precise small pieces. My heart was hammering in my chest, but outwardly, I remained perfectly calm. Years of client presentations had taught me how to control my physical reactions. Mom's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, surprise, shock, and then something that might have been embarrassment. Oh, I see. Yes, she's my daughter. I see. That's wonderful. Yes, thank you for telling me." The conversation continued longer than I'd expected. Mom had gone from speaking in her normal voice to something quieter, more subdued. She kept glancing in my direction, but couldn't seem to meet my eyes. "I understand," Mom said into the phone. "No, you're absolutely right. Yes, I will. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you taking the time to call." She hung up and stared at her phone like it had just delivered news of an alien invasion. The entire table had gone silent. Everyone was watching Mom's reaction with curiosity. Even the kids at the small table in the corner had stopped chattering. "Who was that?" Dad asked. "Jennifer Kim. She's the CEO of Henderson Hospital Network." Mom's voice sounded strange, tight. She set her phone down on the table with exaggerated care, as if it might explode. "She wanted to let me know that she's about to sign a major contract with Rosita's company. She thought I'd want to know since—" Mom trailed off, finally looking at me. "Since it's such a significant achievement." The silence that followed felt like being underwater. I could see mouths opening, people exchanging glances, but everything seemed muffled and distant. "Your company?" Aunt Patricia asked, turning to me, with her eyebrows raised high enough to disappear under her bangs. "Meridian Solutions," I said calmly, taking a sip of water. I needed something to do with my hands, and the cool glass helped ground me. "We do software consulting for healthcare organizations, database management, system integration, HIPAA compliance, that sort of thing. We've been working on the Henderson contract for 3 months. It's worth about $2.3 million over 2 years. Uncle Tom's fork clattered onto his plate. He actually dropped it, sending a piece of green bean flying onto Aunt Patricia's tablecloth. Nobody moved to clean it up. "You own a company?" Jessica asked, her voice an octave higher than usual. My cousin, who worked as a receptionist at a dental office, was staring at me like I'd just revealed I was secretly a superhero. "I founded it 4 years ago. We have 23 employees now and an office in downtown Boston. This will be our largest contract to date, but we have several other hospital networks as clients across New England." Derek had set down his wineglass and was leaning forward. "Wait, back up. You have 23 employees, like people you hired, people who work for you?" "Yes, we have developers, project managers, a sales team, operations staff. Marcus, my CTO, has been with me since month 7. Amanda came on as director of operations in year 2. We've built a really strong team." Grandma Helen was staring at me like I'd just revealed I could fly. Her mouth hung slightly open, and she'd completely abandoned her dinner. 23 people. Rosita, honey, I had no idea." "Most people didn't," I said, keeping my tone neutral, even though my stomach was doing somersaults. Cousin Brandon, who worked at a mid-sized law firm and never missed an opportunity to mention it, cleared his throat. "How does one even start a software company? Did you have investors?" "No investors. I bootstrapped everything. Started with $12,000. I'd saved from my previous job as a senior developer. The first year, I slept on my friend's couch and lived on ramen noodles.
But every dollar we made went back into the business. We reinvested our profits, grew carefully, hired slowly. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. $12,000 to a multi-million-dollar contract, Uncle Tom said slowly, as if testing the words to see if they made sense. Rosita, that's extraordinary. Dad, who had been silent through this entire exchange, looked at Mom.
Something passed between them. Some unspoken communication that happens in long marriages. Then he turned to me. Why didn't we know about any of this? The question hung in the air. Everyone was waiting for my answer. I could feel 23 pairs of eyes on me, including the kids who'd stopped eating to listen to the adult drama unfolding. Because nobody asked, I said simply. Well, Nathan asked. He's actually been to my office, met my team, seen what we built, but everyone else. I shrugged, going for casual, even though my pulse was racing. It's hard to explain what you do when people don't think it's worth their time to listen. Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Her face had gone from pale to red, and she was gripping her napkin so tightly her knuckles had turned white. That's not fair, she said quietly. I've always supported you. The words came out before I could stop them, fueled by 4 years of accumulated hurt. You told everyone I was bouncing between jobs not 20 minutes ago. You laughed along with them. How is that support? I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You never wanted to know. My voice was rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. I invited you to our anniversary celebration. I sent you the invitation by email. Called you twice to remind you. You chose book club instead. Aunt Patricia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. A few people were looking down at their plates, clearly wishing they were anywhere else. I tried to tell you about our first major contract, I continued. I called you the same day we signed it because I was so excited I could barely breathe. Do you remember what you said? Mom's eyes were glistening now. She shook her head. You said, that's nice, honey, but have you thought about grad school? You suggested I should get a real degree instead of wasting my time on consulting work. Rosita, Dad started, but I was on a roll now. At my birthday dinner last year, you invited Karen so she could spend an hour telling everyone about Emily's corporate job, every detail of her salary, her benefits, her office. And when Karen asked what I did, you called it computer work and said you hoped I'd find something permanent. Mom, I had 11 employees at that point. I had an office lease and corporate insurance. I was permanent. The table had gone from silent to tomb-like. Even Aunt Patricia's dog, who'd been begging for scraps under the table, had slunk away to the living room. Mom's mascara was starting to run. A single tear tracked down her cheek, cutting through her carefully applied makeup. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered. I thought if I didn't make a big deal about it, then if things didn't work out, you wouldn't be embarrassed. Protecting me from what? Success? Pride in my own accomplishments? Or were you protecting yourself from having to admit your daughter didn't follow the script you'd written for her life? The words were harsh, harsher than I'd intended, but they were also true. Mom had always had very specific ideas about how our lives should unfold. Nathan was supposed to be a doctor. He was following the plan. I was supposed to be something impressive and conventional, lawyer, doctor, professor, something she could brag about at her book club. Entrepreneur wasn't in her vocabulary unless it came with a pedigree in venture capital funding. That's enough, Dad said firmly. Not angry, but definitive. Rosita, your mother made a mistake. She admitted it. But this is Thanksgiving dinner, and we're family. Family is supposed to support each other, I countered. Family is supposed to celebrate each other's wins, not diminish them in front of everyone. Nathan spoke up from his end of the table. She has a point. Dad, I've heard Mom make comments about Rosita's work for years. It's always dismissive, always suggesting she should be doing something else. Meanwhile, Rosita's built something genuinely impressive, and none of us knew because nobody bothered to pay attention. The table had become the courtroom, and everyone was watching the proceedings with rapt attention. Mom looked around, perhaps hoping for support, but everyone else seemed too stunned to speak. When did Jennifer Kim call you? I asked, my voice steady. What exactly did she say? Mom swallowed. She said she was excited about the partnership with Meridian Solutions. She mentioned that she'd looked into your background and was impressed that you built everything from the ground up without outside funding. She said you were one of the most competent tech leaders she'd worked with. Mom paused.
She also said she hoped I was proud of you. The implication hung heavy in the air. Jennifer hadn't just called to inform Mom about the contract. She'd called to gently shame her, to hold up a mirror and show her what she'd been missing. It was elegant in its subtlety.
She told me something else, too, Mom continued, her voice barely above a whisper. She said that her own parents didn't support her career choices for years, that they thought she was throwing away her nursing career to pursue administration. She said she wished someone had intervened earlier, had made her parents see what she was accomplishing. She said she was calling me because she didn't want you to feel as invisible as she'd felt. My throat tightened. Jennifer had done exactly what she'd promised, but she'd done it with compassion rather than aggression. She'd shared her own story, making it clear that Mom wasn't uniquely terrible, just uniquely blind to what was right in front of her. Jennifer also mentioned, Mom said, now looking directly at me with red-rimmed eyes, that you'd been reluctant to have her call me, that you'd said it wasn't necessary, that your family was supportive. She said, the fact that you were protecting me even while I was undermining you spoke volumes about your character. Oh, Jennifer, she'd played this perfectly, giving Mom an out while simultaneously making it impossible for her to take it without acknowledging her failures. Brandon cleared his throat again, always uncomfortable with emotional displays. So, Rosita, what exactly does your company do? Like, day to day? I was grateful for the shift, even if it came from Brandon's discomfort rather than genuine interest. We help hospitals and healthcare organizations manage their data more effectively. When you go to the doctor and they pull up your medical history on their computer, someone built the system that organizes all that information. Often, especially in older hospitals, that system is outdated or incompatible with newer technologies. And that's where you come in? Derek asked. Exactly. We migrate their data from old systems to new ones, making sure nothing gets lost or corrupted in the process. We also help them comply with HIPAA regulations, which govern how patient information can be stored and shared. It's complex work that requires understanding both the technical side and the healthcare side. Aunt Patricia was nodding slowly. So you're helping doctors take better care of their patients. In a way, yes. Better data management means doctors can access patient histories faster, see medication interactions, track treatment outcomes. It's not glamorous work, but it matters. How did you learn to do all this? Grandma Helen asked. She finally closed her mouth, but still looked stunned. I studied computer science in college, then worked as a developer for 6 years before starting my own company. I learned the healthcare side on the job, working with clients, asking a lot of questions. Marcus, my CTO, came from a medical software background, so between the two of us, we had the technical and industry knowledge we needed. And you're profitable? Uncle Tom asked. He ran a small insurance agency, so he understood business in a way some of the others didn't. We've been profitable since year 2. First year was rough. I barely paid myself anything and reinvested every dollar we made. But year 2, we hit our stride and we've grown revenue by 40 to 60% every year since. Uncle Tom whistled low. That's exceptional growth. Most small businesses are lucky to see 10% year over year. We've been strategic about which contracts we pursue and how we scale. I didn't want to grow too fast and sacrifice quality, but I also didn't want to stagnate. It's been a careful balance. Jessica leaned forward, genuinely curious now. What's the hardest part? Running your own company, I mean. I considered the question carefully. The responsibility. When you work for someone else, you can clock out at 5 and forget about work until the morning. When you own the company, you're responsible for everything. Every employee's mortgage payment, every client's data security, every decision that could make or break the business. It's with you all the time. Do you regret it? She asked. Not for a second. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most rewarding. There's something incredible about building something from nothing, about creating jobs and solving real problems. Dad had been quiet through all of this, processing. He was an engineer, methodical and analytical. What's your 5-year plan? He finally asked. A question that felt like genuine interest rather than curiosity about the spectacle. We want to hit $10 million in annual revenue and expand beyond New England, I said. There are healthcare organizations all over the country dealing with similar challenges. We're also exploring adjacent services, cybersecurity consulting, cloud migration, AI integration for diagnostic tools. Ambitious, Dad said, and I couldn't tell if he was impressed or concerned. I didn't start this company to stay small. I started it because I saw a need in the market that wasn't being adequately addressed. We're good at what we do, and there's room for us to grow. Cousin Rachel, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. How do you handle the stress? Like, doesn't it keep you up at night? Sometimes, I admitted. There are nights I lie awake worrying about a contract negotiation or a technical problem we're trying to solve. But I've built a strong team. I trust them to handle their areas of expertise, which means I don't have to carry everything myself. That's smart delegation, Uncle Tom said approvingly. A lot of entrepreneurs struggle with letting go of control. I learned that lesson the hard way. In year one, I tried to do everything myself and nearly burned out. Marcus sat me down and told me I either needed to start trusting people or the company would fail. He was right. The conversation had shifted now. People were asking genuine questions, engaging with my career as something real and valuable rather than a curiosity or embarrassment. It felt good, but also bittersweet. Where had these questions been for the past 4 years? Mom hadn't said anything else. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, tears still streaking her makeup, looking smaller somehow. Dad reached over and squeezed her hand, a gesture of support, or perhaps solidarity, in their shared realization of how badly they'd misread their daughter's life. The words hung in the air like smoke. Nathan was grinning openly now. He'd known about my company because he'd actually bothered to ask me about my life during our occasional coffee meetups. He'd even visited my office once and met my team. Why would Jennifer Kim call your mother? Aunt Patricia asked, confused. Because I may have mentioned in one of our meetings that my family didn't really understand what I did for a living, I said. Jennifer found it relatable. She faced similar skepticism from her own family when she decided to leave nursing and pursue her MBA. We bonded over it. I paused. She offered to call my mom if we signed the contract to help explain the significance of what Meridian Solutions does. I told her it wasn't necessary, but she insisted. Jennifer is very thoughtful that way. This was partially true. Jennifer had offered, and I had initially declined. But after tonight's humiliation, I'd sent her a quick text from the bathroom saying I'd changed my mind if the offer still stood. She'd responded immediately with a thumbs-up emoji. Mom was staring at her plate now, her face flushed. $2.3 million, Uncle Tom repeated, as if testing the words. That's incredible, Rosita. The company will gross about $1.8 million this year in total revenue, I added. We're projecting $4.1 million next year with the Henderson contract and 3 other deals in the pipeline. Dad, who had been silent this entire time, finally spoke. Why didn't we know about any of this? Because nobody asked, I said simply. Well, Nathan asked. He's actually been to my office, but everyone else, I shrugged. It's hard to explain what you do when people don't think it's worth their time. Aunt Patricia cleared her throat. I apologize, Rosita. I think we all made assumptions. That was wrong of us. It's fine, I said, though we all knew it wasn't really fine. I just wanted to be clear that I'm not bouncing between jobs. I've been building something real, something I'm proud of for the past 4 years. It's been difficult and sometimes scary, but I've never wavered in my commitment to it. Mom hadn't said anything else. She was still staring at her plate, her food untouched. The dinner conversation eventually resumed, but the energy had shifted. People started asking me questions about my company, about the work we did, about my employees. Derrick wanted to know about our revenue model. Aunt Patricia asked about work-life balance. Grandma Helen just kept saying, I had no idea, and patting my hand. After dinner, I helped clear plates in the kitchen. Mom came in carrying the gravy boat, moving like someone in a daze. Rosita, she said quietly, I need to apologize. I kept rinsing dishes, loading them into Aunt Patricia's dishwasher. I dismissed your work. I made assumptions. I was wrong. Her voice cracked slightly. When Jennifer called and explained what you've built, I felt ashamed. My own daughter has accomplished something extraordinary, and I've been treating it like a hobby. I turned off the water and faced her. Do you know how many times I tried to tell you about Meridian Solutions? About the contracts we were landing, the employees we were hiring, the office we leased? I know. Do you know how it felt to watch you praise Derrick for his accounting job while dismissing everything I've built? Derrick works for someone else. He's good at his job, and that's great. But Mom, I created 23 jobs out of nothing. I provide health insurance for 23 people and their families. I built systems that help hospitals take better care of patients. Mom's eyes were wet now. I know, you're right. I had this idea in my head about what your career should look like, and when it didn't match that image,
I couldn't see what was actually in front of me. You saw what you wanted to see, which was failure.
She flinched. That's not. I didn't think you were failing. I just thought you were still figuring things out. For 4 years, Mom, at what point would you have taken me seriously? She had no answer for that. I needed my mother to believe in me, I continued. Instead, I got dismissal and embarrassment in front of the entire family. Do you understand how that felt? I do now, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Rosita. I'm so sorry. I wanted to stay angry. Part of me felt I had earned the right to hold on to this rage, to make her sit with the discomfort of her own short-sightedness. But she looked genuinely devastated, and despite everything, she was still my mother. I accept your apology, I said carefully. But Mom, things need to change. You need to actually listen when I talk about my work. You need to take it seriously. And you need to stop comparing my path to everyone else's path. I'm not Derek or Brandon or anyone else. I'm me, and I built something I'm proud of, even if it doesn't look like what you expected. I will, I promise. She wiped her eyes. Can I visit your office sometime, meet your team? Yes, I said softly. I'd like that. She hugged me then, and I let her. It wasn't a fix for everything, but it was a start. The rest of Thanksgiving passed without incident. People treated me differently now, with a respect that felt both validating and slightly frustrating. I'd been the same person an hour ago when they were laughing at Mom's joke. My accomplishments hadn't changed. Only their knowledge of those accomplishments had changed. But I suppose that's how the world works sometimes. People need external validation before they can see what's been in front of them all along. I drove home that night with Nathan, who had caught a ride with me to the dinner. That was the most epic thing I've ever witnessed, he said, grinning. The timing of that phone call was perfect. Pure coincidence, I said innocently. Sure it was, he laughed. Seriously, though, I'm proud of you. Not just for the company, but for standing up for yourself. That took guts. Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate that you've always taken me seriously. You're my sister. Of course I take you seriously. Plus, your company is genuinely cool. I still brag to my friends that my sister is a tech CEO. 6 weeks later, the Boston Business Journal profile went live. Rebecca had done an incredible job coordinating everything. The photo they used showed me in my office, standing in front of a whiteboard covered in system architecture diagrams, smiling confidently at the camera. The headline read, Rosita Mitchell, Building Healthcare's Digital Future, One Database at a Time. The article detailed my journey from developer to founder, the challenges of bootstrapping a tech company, and our approach to solving complex data management problems in healthcare. They interviewed Jennifer Kim, who gave a glowing testimonial about our work. They also interviewed Marcus, who talked about the company culture we'd built and why he'd taken a chance on an unknown startup 4 years ago. The article mentioned that I'd built everything without venture capital, relying instead on revenue from early contracts and careful financial management. It discussed the challenges women face in tech leadership and how Meridian Solutions was actively working to build a diverse team. My phone exploded. Former colleagues reached out to congratulate me. Potential clients contacted us through our website. A venture capital firm emailed asking if we were interested in raising money for expansion, which made me laugh, given that I'd deliberately avoided VC funding. And Mom, she shared the article on Facebook with a long caption about how proud she was of her daughter, the CEO. She bought 5 physical copies of the magazine. She called all her friends to tell them about it. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sad that it took a magazine article for her to publicly acknowledge my success. But life moves forward. The Henderson contract officially started in January. We hired 3 new developers, a project manager, and another sales representative. Our office got crowded, so we started looking at larger spaces. By March, the Boston Globe did a follow-up piece on fast-growing tech companies in Massachusetts, and Meridian Solutions made their list. By June, we'd landed 2 more hospital networks as clients. By September, we'd grown to 31 employees, and were seriously considering opening a second office in Providence, Rhode Island. Mom visited the office 4 times over the course of the year. She met my team, sat in on a company meeting, and even attended our 4th anniversary celebration. She asked questions and actually listened to the answers. She stopped telling people I was figuring things out and started telling them I ran a successful software consulting firm. Progress, as they say, is progress. Did I orchestrate the phone call timing at Thanksgiving dinner? Absolutely. Did I feel guilty about it? Not particularly. Sometimes people need a wake-up call delivered at precisely the right moment for maximum impact. Here's what I learned from the whole experience. You can't force people to see your worth. You can only keep building, keep working, keep proving yourself through your actions rather than your words. Eventually, the results speak for themselves. And when people finally start paying attention, you get to decide whether you let them back in or not. I chose to let Mom back in, but on different terms. She no longer gets to dismiss my career or compare me unfavorably to others. She has to meet me where I am, not where she thinks I should be. As for Aunt Patricia's Thanksgiving dinner, I was invited back this year. Mom apparently told Aunt Patricia in advance to prepare for 25 people instead of 24, because she wanted to make sure there was a seat for Marcus, my CTO, who had become like family to me. I want to meet the man who took a chance on my daughter when she was starting out, Mom had said when we arrived. Aunt Patricia made a point of asking me about Meridian Solutions within the first 5 minutes. She wanted to know about our growth, our clients, our future plans. The conversation was genuine, interested, respectful. And when Aunt Patricia asked, "So, Rosita, how's business?" nobody laughed. They listened. They asked follow-up questions. They treated my career with the same respect they showed Derek's accounting job and Brandon's law practice. Progress indeed. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about forcing people to see what they refuse to see, about demanding the respect you've already earned, about refusing to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's limited vision of success. I built something real. I created jobs. I solved problems. I led a team. And now finally, my family knows it. That's the sweetest revenge of all.